September 11th, 2001, 9:59 a.m., North Tower, World Trade Center. Captain J. Jonas stands in Stairway B on the 27th floor of the North Tower, leading his crew from Ladder Company 6 down the stairs. They've been climbing and descending these stairs for over an hour, helping people evacuate, checking floors, doing what firefighters do. Around them, firefighters Billy Butler, Mike Meldrum, Matt Komarovsky, Sal D'Agostino, and Tommy Falco. They're exhausted. Their gear weighs 60 pounds each. They've been going up and down stairs in a building that's 110 stories tall, and everyone knows the South Tower just collapsed 30 minutes ago. Jonas makes a decision. Time to get out. The building is failing. He can feel it. He orders his men down, fast. On the 20th floor, they encountered Josephine Harris. She's 59 years old, heavyset, works as a bookkeeper on the 73rd floor. She's been walking downstairs for over an hour. Her legs have given out. She can't go any further. Jonas faces a choice every firefighter dreads: leave her and save his crew, or help her and risk everyone. "We're not leaving you," he says. They take her arms, support her weight, and continue down, slowly, step by step, floor by floor. 20th floor, 19th, 18th. At 10:28 a.m. on the 4th floor in Stairway B, the world ends. The North Tower collapses. 110 stories of steel and concrete pancake down on top of them at free fall speed. The sound is indescribable, like the earth splitting open. The stairwell fills with dust so thick they can't see their hands in front of their faces. The building around them disintegrates. And then, silence. J. Jonas does a head count in the darkness. Everyone responds. 6 firefighters from Ladder 6, Josephine Harris, plus Chief Richard Picciotto, who had been a few floors above them. 14 other people scattered in the same section of stairwell. 16 people total, alive, in the middle of where the North Tower used to be. Above them, 106 floors of building, gone, pulverized to dust. Below them, the rest of the stairwell, destroyed. Around them, nothing. The entire 110-story tower has collapsed into rubble, except for this one section of Stairway B, roughly from the 2nd to 4th floor. Everyone above them in the building, dead. Everyone below them who is still in the tower, dead. The firefighters who were ahead of Ladder 6, already at ground level, crushed when the tower came down. 16 people survived the collapse of the North Tower. All of them were in Stairway B between the 2nd and 4th floors. Every single one. And the reason they were on the 4th floor instead of already out of the building is because they stopped to help a 59-year-old woman who couldn't walk fast enough. This is the story of Stairway B, the miracle that engineers still don't fully understand. The story of how slowing down to help someone saved lives instead of ending them, and how 16 people became the only survivors of a collapse that should have killed everyone inside. To understand the miracle, you need to understand what Ladder Company 6 was doing in the North Tower in the first place. At 8:46 a.m. on September 11th, 2001, American Airlines Flight 11 struck the North Tower between the 93rd and 99th floors. The impact tore a hole in the building, ignited thousands of gallons of jet fuel, and started fires that would burn for the next 102 minutes. Captain J. Jonas and Ladder Company 6 were in their firehouse in Chinatown when the call came. They responded immediately. Their assignment? Evacuate people from the upper floors and fight the fires if possible. They entered the North Tower lobby and began climbing, Stairway B, step after step, flight after flight. Their gear, coats, helmets, boots, air tanks, tools weighed over 60 pounds each. By the time they reached the 27th floor, they'd been climbing for 45 minutes. They were exhausted, sweating, and increasingly aware that this was unlike any fire they'd ever faced. The building was swaying, debris was falling, the heat was intense, even 60 floors below the impact zone. At 9:03 a.m., while they were climbing, the South Tower was hit by United Airlines Flight 175. Jonas didn't see it happen, but he heard the explosion and felt the North Tower shake. Ladder 6 continued climbing. They reached the 27th floor and encountered people coming down, office workers, injured victims, people who had walked from the 80th floor and beyond. The firefighters helped them, gave them water, encouraged them to keep moving. Then, at 9:59 a.m., the South Tower collapsed. Jonas was on the 27th floor when he felt the building shudder violently. He didn't know what had happened. He thought maybe the North Tower had been hit again. He radioed for information, but got no clear answer. Chief Joseph Pfeiffer's voice came over the radio. All units in the North Tower, evacuate immediately. That was it. The order was clear. Get out. Jonas gathered his crew. We're leaving, now. They started down Stairway B, moving fast, passing other firefighters who were still climbing. Jonas told everyone, get out. The building's coming down. Some listened, some didn't. Many of those who kept climbing never made it out. Ladder 6 descended quickly. 27th floor, 25th, 23rd, 20th. On the 20th floor, they found Josephine Harris. Josephine Harris had worked on the 73rd floor. When the plane hit, she started walking down immediately. No elevators, just stairs. 73 floors to ground level. She made it to the 20th floor before her legs gave out. She was overweight, out of shape, and had been walking downstairs for over an hour. She sat down on the landing and told people to go around her. She couldn't continue. Most people did go around her. You don't stop to help strangers when a building is on fire and you're trying to escape. But Jonas stopped. Years later, Jonas would say he doesn't know exactly why he stopped. Instinct, training, maybe just basic human decency. He saw an older woman who couldn't walk, and he couldn't leave her. What's your name? He asked. Josephine, she said. I can't go any further. Yes, you can, Jonas said. We're going to help you. His crew looked at him like he was crazy. They were firefighters, trained to save lives, but they were also trained to assess risk. The building could collapse any second. Every minute they spent helping Josephine was a minute closer to death. But Jonas made the call. They would take her with them. Billy Butler and Mike Meldrum took her arms. Matt Komorowski supported her from behind. They started down again, but much slower. Josephine could only manage a few steps before needing to rest. They stopped every few floors, then every floor, then every few steps. 20th floor, 19th, 18th, 15th, 12th. Time was stretching out. Other firefighters passed them, moving faster. Jonas urged his crew to keep going, keep encouraging Josephine. Don't leave her. 10th floor, 8th, 6th, 5th. They were almost out, just a few more floors. They could see light from the lobby below. Rescue was close. 4th floor. Josephine stopped. She couldn't go any further. Her legs were shaking. She sat down on the landing. Jonas looked at his crew. They were on the 4th floor of a 110-story building that had been burning for 90 minutes. They were almost out, almost safe. Come on, Josephine, just a few more floors. She shook her head. I can't. Go without me. Jonas refused. We're not leaving you. We'll rest here for a minute, then keep going. It was 10:27 a.m. They'd been in the building for over an hour and 40 minutes. At 10:28 a.m., the North Tower began to collapse. The sound is what everyone remembers first. A roar. Not like an explosion, more like the earth itself splitting apart. A deep, rumbling thunder that grew louder and louder until it drowned out everything else. Matt Komorowski was standing near the fourth-floor landing when he heard it. He looked up and saw the ceiling start to buckle. Dust began pouring down the stairwell. The walls started to shake. "Hit the deck!" someone yelled. The firefighters dropped to the ground, pulling Josephine down with them. They covered their heads. There was nothing else to do. The collapse happened in seconds. 110 stories of steel and concrete falling at nearly free-fall speed, pancaking floor by floor, pulverizing everything in its path. The stairwell filled with dust so thick it was like being buried alive. The noise was deafening, the pressure was crushing. The walls around them buckled and cracked, but somehow didn't completely give way. And then, after what felt like an eternity but was probably less than 15 seconds, it stopped. Silence. Not complete silence. There were sounds of debris settling, metal creaking, distant thuds, but the roar was gone. The collapse was over. Jonas lay on the landing, covered in dust, ears ringing. He couldn't see anything. The dust was so thick it was like being underwater in ink. He couldn't tell if his eyes were open or closed. He did a mental inventory. He was alive. He could move his arms and legs. He was breathing, though every breath filled his lungs with gritty dust. "Sound off," he yelled. "Everyone say your name." One by one, voices responded from the darkness. Butler, Meldrum, Komorowski, D'Agostino, Falco, Josephine. All 6 of his crew, plus Josephine, all alive. Another voice called out from above them, "Chief Picciotto here, I'm okay." Chief Richard Picciotto had been a few floors above Ladder 6 when the collapse began. He'd ridden the building down and somehow ended up in the same section of stairwell. More voices, Fire Marshal Ronnie Bucca, Port Authority Captain David Lim, EMT Josephine Gallagher, others. 16 people total, scattered across maybe 3 floors of stairwell, all alive, buried in the rubble of what used to be the North Tower, but alive. Jonas tried to process what had happened. The building had collapsed. They were inside it when it came down, and they survived. How? As the dust began to settle, though it never fully cleared, Jonas and his crew tried to understand their situation. They were in a section of Stairway B that was still mostly intact. The stairs above them were gone, destroyed or blocked. The stairs below them were gone too. But this one tiny section of stairwell survived. It was a void, a small pocket of open space in the middle of devastation. The walls were cracked, the ceiling was buckling, but it was holding, for now. Jonas tried his radio. Static. He tried again. Nothing. The radios weren't working, either damaged or blocked by all the debris. Chief Picciotto started organizing. They needed to figure out how to get out. They had no idea what the outside world looked like, whether help was coming, whether anyone even knew they were alive. They tried going up the stairs. After about half a flight, they hit a wall of debris. Impassable. They tried going down. The stairwell was blocked with rubble after just a few steps. They were trapped. The air was thick with dust. Every breath was difficult. Josephine Harris was coughing badly. Some of the firefighters had minor injuries, cuts, bruises, possible broken ribs, but everyone was conscious and able to move. Tommy Falco found a partially broken window in the stairwell wall. He looked out and saw nothing but rubble. The entire plaza was gone. Where there used to be buildings, there was just a massive pile of twisted steel and pulverized concrete. "The whole building came down," he said quietly. "It's all gone." The realization settled over them. They were alive, but they were buried in the collapse of a 110-story building. The chances of anyone finding them seemed impossibly small. But then they heard something. A voice. Distant but real. "Hello? Is anyone alive in there?" Someone outside had heard them. The voice belonged to a firefighter searching the rubble. Ladder 6 had been calling out, yelling for help, hoping someone would hear them. Someone did. "We're in here," Jonas yelled. "Ladder 6, we're trapped in the stairwell." The voice called back, "How many of you?" 16. We have civilians with us." The rescue effort began immediately, but it wasn't simple. The stairwell where Ladder 6 was trapped was buried under tons of debris. The rescuers outside couldn't just dig straight down. The rubble was unstable. One wrong move and the entire void could collapse, killing everyone inside. The firefighters outside started carefully removing debris piece by piece. It was slow work. Hours passed. Inside the stairwell, Ladder 6 waited. They shared water from the few bottles they had. They tried to keep Josephine comfortable. Chief Picciotto kept everyone calm, reassuring them that rescue was coming. The dust was still thick. Breathing was difficult. Some of the group were showing signs of shock. But they were alive, and help was coming. At around 12:30 p.m., 2 hours after the collapse, rescuers broke through. Light streamed into the stairwell, fresh air, voices. "We're coming to get you. Stay calm." One by one, the survivors were helped out of the stairwell. Josephine Harris went first, carefully lifted over debris and passed hand to safety. Then the other civilians. Then Ladder 6. Then Chief Picciotto. 16 people pulled from the rubble of the North Tower, the only survivors of the collapse who had been inside the building above ground level when it came down. When they emerged into daylight, the scene was apocalyptic. Lower Manhattan looked like a war zone. Dust covered everything. Buildings were damaged or destroyed. And where the Twin Towers had stood, there were just massive piles of smoking rubble. Jonas looked back at where he'd come from. The North Tower was gone, completely gone. And somehow, he and his crew and the people they'd helped had survived. Later, when investigators examined the collapse site, they would find the remains of Stairway B, a small section, roughly 3 floors, still partially intact in the middle of millions of tons of debris. Everything above it, destroyed. Everything below it, destroyed. That one section, standing. Engineers and scientists have spent years trying to understand why Stairway B survived when everything else in the North Tower collapsed. The North Tower fell in a progressive collapse. The floors above the impact zone, weakened by fire and structural damage, gave way first. When they fell, they hit the floors below with tremendous force. Each floor added more weight and speed to the falling mass. The building essentially crushed itself, floor by floor, all the way to the ground. This type of collapse pulverizes almost everything in its path. Concrete is turned to dust, steel is twisted and sheared. Stairwells and elevator shafts, normally the strongest parts of a building, are destroyed along with everything else. So why did Stairway B survive? The most widely accepted theory involves the building's core structure and the way the collapse progressed. The Twin Towers had a strong central core containing the stairwells and elevator shafts. When the collapse began, the outer shell of the building, the floors and exterior walls, fell first. The interior remained standing for a fraction of a second longer. As the outer building collapsed around it, some sections of the core were subjected to different forces than others. Most of the core was crushed or sheared off, but one small section, the part of Stairway B between roughly the 2nd and 4th floors, ended up in what structural engineers call a protected void. The debris falling around it created a kind of protective cocoon. Massive pieces of steel from the core ended up bridging over the stairwell section like a crude roof. The weight of the debris was distributed around the void rather than directly onto it. It's not that the stairwell was stronger than the rest of the building, it was just lucky. The collapse dynamics happened to leave that one small section relatively protected while destroying everything else. Dr. W. Gene Corley, who led the engineering investigation into the collapse, later said, "The survival of those people in Stairway B was essentially random. The collapse created a pocket of survivable space, and they happened to be in it. A few floors higher or lower, and they would have been killed. It was luck, plain and simple." But other factors contributed to their survival. First, they were low in the building. The collapse generated the most destructive force in the middle and upper sections. By the time the debris reached the lower floors, some of the energy had been absorbed by the floors above. Second, the stairwell's construction was robust. Stairwells in the Twin Towers were encased in concrete and reinforced with steel. This made them among the strongest parts of the building. While this wasn't enough to protect most stairwells, it may have helped Stairway B withstand the initial shock. Third, timing. They were on the 4th floor when the collapse began. If they'd been just a few floors lower, already in the lobby or basement, they would have been crushed when the upper building came down. If they'd been a few floors higher, the section of stairwell they were in would have been destroyed. And finally, Josephine Harris. If they hadn't stopped to help her, they would have been out of the building by 10:28 a.m. They would have been at ground level when the tower collapsed, and they would have been killed by the falling debris that crushed everything around the base of the tower. Slowing down to help someone who couldn't move fast enough saved their lives. J. Jonas and Ladder Company 6 became symbols of heroism on 9/11. They risked their lives to help a stranger, and in doing so, saved themselves. Josephine Harris recovered from her injuries and lived for another 10 years before passing away in 2011 from unrelated causes. She remained close with the firefighters who saved her, attending commemorations and events with them. "They're my guardian angels," she would say. "They didn't have to stop for me. They chose to." Chief Richard Picciotto wrote a book about his experience called Last Man Down. The title referred to the fact that he was the highest-ranking officer in the North Tower when it collapsed and one of the last people to make it out alive. Of the 16 people who survived in Stairway B, all recovered from their immediate physical injuries, though many dealt with long-term health effects from dust exposure and trauma. The psychological impact was profound. Matt Komorowski later described the guilt of survival, wondering why he lived when so many others died. Why was he on the 4th floor instead of the 14th? Why did Stairway B survive when Stairways A and C didn't? There are no good answers to those questions. Survival in a building collapse is largely random. The difference between life and death can be a matter of seconds, a few feet of distance, pure chance. 343 firefighters died on 9/11. Ladder Company 6 lost friends and colleagues. The entire fire department was devastated. But Jonas and his crew survived, and they carried the weight of that survival with them. In the years since, Stairway B has become a symbol, not just of miraculous survival, but of the choice to help others even when it seems irrational. Jonas had every reason to leave Josephine Harris. His responsibility was to his crew. Getting them out safely was the priority. Stopping to help a civilian who couldn't keep up was a risk that could have gotten everyone killed. But he stopped anyway. And that choice, which seemed like it would slow them down and put them in danger, instead put them in the exact place they needed to be when the building collapsed. It's a reminder that doing the right thing doesn't always lead to disaster. Sometimes doing the right thing saves your life.